Chat. Arsenal have scored a lot of goals from set pieces over the past few seasons. Now, I'm sure that that's news to you guys, right? It's not as if every single person on football Twitter talks about it or, journalists are discussing it. It's not as if it's on the goddamn FootMob commentary tab, but it is true. They have the most set piece goals scored since August of 2023, and it is not even close. At the time of this article, they have scored 43 goals in just over 2 years, while the next closest club has 33, but it really stands out when you look at this season specifically. Arsenal have scored nearly a quarter of their set piece tally in this season alone, and that also means 60% of their Premier League goals this season have come from a set piece. Now, I'm sure some of you may ask, but Dagnal, doesn't it bother you that Arsenal only seem to be able to really score off of set pieces and corners? Well, my answer is the same as a neglectful stepdad's when their kid shows them a picture that they drew. I don't care, leave me alone, but, first bring me a beer. So I try to stay as level-headed and unbiased as possible whenever I talk about Arsenal, because a huge pet peeve of mine is whenever I see fans acting delusional, reactionary, brainless, basically just, being annoying as hell. But it's important to stay unbiased so you can actually talk about some of these things and actually have a reasonable opinion. But for this thing specifically, I can't promise anything because it seems like every single person does not want Arsenal to win the title. Now, Arsenal are back to being title contenders after a very rough season last year, and it makes sense why rival fans don't want this to happen. I mean, just seeing Man United win a couple of matches in a row made me break out in hives, but it's more than just rival fans chiming in. You got Jamie Carragher writing a piece about long throws ruining the game and putting an Arsenal player in the picture when 1, Arsenal have not scored from a throw-in, and 2, it is absolutely hilarious that long throws are coming back. Seeing Stoke City tactics without Stoke City is a wet dream. There's of course football Twitter saying football Twitter things, but honestly it is the pundits and the journalists that have surprised me most of all. Now, I'm not English and I'm not used to their journalistic practices, so that one, might be on me. Now, I've seen bad headlines and biased reporting before, especially when it comes to reporting on bigger clubs, because that's what will drive engagement. Now, I'm not saying that it only happens to Arsenal, because truthfully, it doesn't. I don't believe that Šeško was an amazing transfer for United, but to say it was worse than Trafford, who has made 2 appearances since August 31st, both in the Carabao Cup? Yeah, no, I don't know. That seems a bit fishy. The thing is, Arsenal are leading the table, and they're doing so by scoring set-piece goals and being defensively sound. Part of that is due to how Arteta wants to play, that is true, but then there's mitigating circumstances as well. Injuries to 5 attackers and the most creative midfield will, and this is true, make it harder to attack. Did you hear that, Jeff Stelling? Recently, he was moaning about Arsenal wanting to be more expansive against Crystal Palace, and specifically said that he loves watching Odegaard.
I love Saka, I love Odegaard.
He was hurt against Palace, Jeffrey. There was Peter Schmeichel who said that he wanted Liverpool to beat Arsenal because we play ugly, which is weird considering he's a United legend. Bit odd wanting Liverpool to win there, but it's even weirder when his brand of football was so ugly FIFA had to make a rule change so keepers could not pick the ball up from a teammate's pass with their feet. But then there was this article saying that set pieces are ruining the Premier League. Now, this guy goes on to say that the sport is more boring than ever right now. There's less long shots, there's less creativity, and honestly, some of what he's talking about I actually do agree with, but not only is the sport starting to kind of revert back to its more relationist play style roots, but a lot of his arguments seem a little bit narrow-minded. Now, his thinking comes from an entertainment perspective, which is obviously fair, that makes sense. But if that entertainment only comes from focusing on what happens inside of the match, on the pitch, then that's honestly a little bit closed off. While that's a huge part of it, it's important to think about the bigger picture and look at the stories that develop within a season or even a few seasons. For example, he doesn't want data to take over the game, similar to what happened with Moneyball in baseball, where people try to get on base or hit home runs. Yeah, you know, God forbid I want to see a 450-foot bomb to dead center. I understand not wanting data to be involved in every single part of the sport, but if Moneyball didn't happen in baseball, we wouldn't have witnessed a great story from the Oakland A's, and we might not have seen Brighton or Brentford's amazing rise to the top. Now, using data will also add parity to a season. It's going to help the little guys win a little bit more often and actually give them a fighting chance, just like what happened in Sweden with Mjällby. But honestly, what really takes the cake is just seeing the article go off the rails when you read a little bit further. What happens though when everyone is doing everything they can to win? Are they not doing that already? People respect and connect emotionally with the teams that are willing to take lots of risks in order to score goals. We need those teams to make the narrative fabric of the sport interesting, but also just to make the games themselves interesting. Now sure, people do like risks more, right? That's obviously fair, and it does make the games more interesting. But you don't necessarily need that from a narrative perspective. If a club does not get a single point all season, right? They win literally 0 matches, they get 0 draws, 38 losses, that would be the most interesting story of the season, period. If you're more likely to score from a corner kick than an open play possession, what's the point of attempting a dangerous dribble through traffic? So you can get a better shot than a corner kick? Like, it's still a 1v1 shot, man. Like, look at Van de Ven. He attempted a dangerous dribble through traffic and he got that opportunity. Like, he could have passed it too. Like, what are you talking about? The main point behind all of these clips, all of these articles, all of these headlines is that Arsenal is boring. That's the claim that's been thrown around. Now, I'll be the first to say that Arsenal have indeed played prettier football in the past. I mean, for me personally, the 2012 to 2015 Wenger ball days are what made me fall in love with that type of football and just playmakers in general. But to say that Arsenal are boring, or the reason why the Premier League is going in the direction it currently is wrong. Like, I get it's an opinion, and opinions can't really be wrong, but this one is. That's impressive that you did that. Now, it can't really be Arsenal's fault, because are we forgetting that Pep Guardiola exists? His entire play style made everyone question if the sport was boring and if he was the reason. Lots of possession, less long shots, less risk-taking. Remember, Jack Grealish was a very creative player before Pep got his hands on him. Now, I don't believe that he made the game boring or that Manchester City play in a boring way, but these discussions were brought up long before this season. And as I said before, I do believe that Arsenal played in a more entertaining way when Wenger was in charge, but just because something is more boring than something else doesn't mean that it's boring altogether. If you get a 95% on one test and then the next one you get a 90%, you did factually worse, but you didn't really do poorly. You get what I'm saying? Right? That's a good test score, all right? Keep your head up, kid. If Arsenal were boring, they probably would not have created the second most expected goals in the league this season. I mean, that's a pretty good spot to be in, especially when you have the best defense in the league and arguably the world, making it more likely to rely on them than the attack. Now, it's obvious that they would also have the most XG from set pieces and by a wide margin too. So, you know, that must mean that they're like, what, 14th, maybe 15th in open play XG, right? They're 4th. Now, I get it's not the highest, and there are times that Arsenal have absolutely been too conservative in the past. I mean, just this season alone, they played this unholy midfield trio when Eze was on the bench. But come on now, right? It's not as if Arsenal are completely useless in open play. Now, it's worth mentioning that Arsenal have struggled breaking down low blocks in the past, and that's still true to this day. And that's led to a fairly lackluster XG creation, at least compared to what should be happening with the amount of talent at their disposal. So what have they done? They've adapted. They started using set pieces to make up for their lower than expected XG from open play, which is a concept that's foreign to pundits, I suppose. I'm not sure. But why wouldn't they? right? I mean, their personnel is quite literally perfect for it. You have Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka sending the ball in on corners, two of the best players in the world at dead ball deliveries. You have Gabriel, who has the most goal contributions by a center back in the Premier League since joining Arsenal in 2020, while being tied for the most in Europe's top 5 leagues. Then you got a bunch of other gigantic trees just lumbering around the box to sweep up anything Gabriel does not put home. Saliba, 6'4", Havertz, 6'4", Mosquera, 6'3", Calafiori, 6'2", Marino, 6'2", Gyökeres, 6'2", White, 6'1", Norgard, 6'1", Rice, 6'1". When I said trees lumbering around, I meant it. That's not an exaggeration. They're all basically Groot with a better footballing ability. Now, they can also rely on scoring less goals because, as mentioned before, they have the best defense in the world, which is a bit surprising given that they had this man in the team before, right? Goat Staffy, am I right? It makes sense why Arsenal plays this way, and it clearly works, even when there's an injury crisis in attack. Now, most of this talk, honestly, comes from jealousy. Just because these people's favorite club aren't first, playing the most beautiful football with 0 goals conceded and 382 goals scored, means whoever's in first is dumb and stupid and playing wrong. Now, I do think that there is a small minority who genuinely hate this style of play, and no matter who is on top of the table, they would probably have the same opinion. But for everyone else, the vast majority, I think their tune would be changed if their team were in first. And as I said before, I would prefer if Wenger ball and relationism really started to take hold once again, because I do think it's more entertaining. But it's worth noting that, for one, we're already seeing shades of it appear in Europe, with clubs like Malaby, Juventus, and Racing Santander implementing this playstyle, so it could very well be on its way back. And number two, whatever playstyle Arsenal would use that would actually win them a trophy, any trophy at all, would be fine by me. But until that happens, I'm just gonna be as reactionary as everyone else. All right, we choked again. It's over. Like, we're done. We're cooked. It's just wrap it up. You won't hurt me like Arsenal do. Well, emotionally. You already have physically.